They called her a freak. At Mel's diner, the waitress with the scars hid beneath long sleeves, enduring daily taunts about her ruined hands from customers who saw only deformity, never what was buried beneath. For 3 years, Sarah Miller carried her secret in silence, pouring coffee while people mocked her and tossed tips to the floor as if she weren't worth respect. But today, when a construction worker's rough shove sent her off balance, her careful disguise slipped. Her sleeve slid back, exposing a military tattoo that froze a quiet man in the corner booth. His reaction would unravel every assumption in that diner. What truth lies behind those scars? Share your thoughts below. Michael Kelly had been sunk into that corner booth for hours, the same seat he'd claimed when the morning rush was just beginning and the coffee was still fresh. His weathered fingers gripped a third cup of black coffee gone cold as he wrestled with nearly 2 decades of searching. The photograph tucked in his jacket pocket seemed to burn against him, a faded picture of his younger self in desert fatigues beside fellow soldiers from the 3rd Infantry Division. Faces full of confidence before that night in July 2006 turned everything into a nightmare that still stalked his sleep. He studied the waitress as she moved with quiet discipline between tables, every step economical and precise, always keeping her left side angled away, always wrapped in long sleeves despite the oppressive heat that had other customers fanning themselves with menus. The way she scanned the room every few minutes as though sweeping for threats. Only someone with training would notice. But Michael saw more than just training. There was something in her bearing that had kept him here, long after his quick breakfast turned into an hours-long vigil. "It has to be her," he whispered for what felt like the 20th time, his voice drowned by the rattle of the failing air conditioner and the hiss of bacon in the kitchen. After 18 years of scouring VA hospitals, veteran reunions, forums, databases, this has to be her, right here in this forgotten diner. But doubt clawed at him. How could he be sure when the last time he'd seen her? Her face was lit by flames and streaked with blood. The last thing he heard before blacking out in that burning Humvee was her voice. The memories cut like shrapnel. The thunder of the IED, the fire that turned their vehicle into an oven, the door that jammed no matter how hard he pulled. Then her face appeared through the smoke, like an avenging angel who risked everything to save him. He remembered her hands pulling him out through a window barely wide enough. Remembered how she went back for Thompson, even as ammo cooked off around her. Most of all, he remembered the second blast, when she threw herself over him without hesitation. The diner bell clanged harshly, yanking him for his thoughts. Chad Morrison and his construction crew swaggered in, radiating the kind of arrogance that turned quiet calm into static before storm. Chad, 6'2", wore his Branson construction shirt like a badge of ego, muscles more sculpted in the gym than earned on site. His eyes prowled the room like a predator seeking weakness. The kind of man who peaked in high school and spent the rest of his life clinging to that illusion of dominance. His smirk found Sarah, and his crew already braced for his brand of cruelty disguised as humor. Well, boys, looks like we've got ourselves a mystery," Chad boomed, loud enough for half the diner. His tone carried that fake friendliness bullies used when lining up their audience for humiliation. "Hey, waitress, why don't you dress for the weather? It's boiling in here, and you're bundled up like it's the Arctic. What are you hiding? Something nasty? Burned scars from a meth fire, maybe? Track marks you don't want the health inspector catching." His cronies chuckled on cue, a grating sound in the tense stillness. Other patrons buried their faces in coffee cups and newspapers, the coward's way of letting cruelty thrive. Sarah approached the table in steady steps, her expression a mask of calm professionalism honed through countless encounters like this. Michael noticed the faint tightness in her shoulders, her left hand hidden carefully behind her pad. The sun cut through grimy windows, casting the diner into zones of brightness and shadow. Ordinary life on one side, buried traumas on the other. Sarah's voice, flat and measured, carried no reaction to the insult. "Good morning, gentlemen. What can I start for you today?" Her composure only fed Chad's fury. Bullies thrived on reaction, and her lack of one was salt in his ego's wound. His smirk hardened into anger, the kind small men wore when denied control. Michael's fists clenched white against the table. The scars on his own knuckles ached as he fought the urge to intervene. Something in Sarah's bearing, calm, unshaken, spoke of strength far beyond this moment. The photo in his pocket grew heavier. He traced her jawline with his eyes, the tilt of her shoulders, the way she tucked a strand of dark hair with her right hand while keeping the left concealed. Movements rehearsed to hide something, yet betraying a deeper truth to anyone who knew what to look for. His mind overlaid memory with reality, matching the bloodied savior of that night to the quiet waitress serving people unworthy of her presence. Chad leaned back, giving her a showy once-over dripping with disdain, a parody of disgust that would have been laughable if it weren't so vicious. "Maybe start by telling us why you're dressed like it's January," he sneered. "What are you hiding under there? Burn marks from some kitchen fire, huh? Bet you were too stupid to watch the fryer," Chad sneered. "Or maybe you're just one of those sad cutters who can't cope with life without carving it into your own skin." His words hung in the air like venom, his crew's laughter faltering into uneasy chuckles as even they sensed he was crossing into territory better left alone. 2 tables over, an elderly couple exchanged anxious looks. The husband's jaw clenched as his hand drifted toward his cane, ready to rise, but his wife laid a gentle hand on his arm, whispering, "Don't. It isn't our fight." Her eyes, though, carried the sting of shame for choosing safety over principle. The diner itself seemed to hold its breath, thick with the stifling weight of silence, the cowardice of witnesses unwilling to step in. Even the cook had gone still, watching from the service window, spatula gripped tightly, as if weighing whether to intervene. Moments like these revealed who people truly were. The choice between comfort and courage laid bare. Most, as usual, were failing. The air felt charged, thick as storm clouds before a downpour, every patron bracing for something to snap. And in the corner, why was the quiet stranger watching her with such intensity? What did Michael Kelly see in this scarred waitress that made him grip his coffee so tightly his knuckles blanched, that sent his fingers, again and again, toward the photo in his pocket like a charm against uncertainty? The answer, when it came, would upend every assumption about the woman serving their coffee with lowered eyes and scarred hands. Chad fed off the silence, his cruelty swelling like a parasite drawing power from the weakness around him. "You know what I think?" he declared loudly, more for the audience than Sarah herself. "Bet those scars came from a meth lab blowing up. That's what these little towns are famous for, right? Trailer trash cooking drugs until boom." He clapped his hands together in an exaggerated explosion, making Sarah flinch back ever so slightly, something only Michael's sharp eyes caught. "Or maybe you passed out drunk with a cigarette and burned your own place down?" Chad added with mock pity. "That's why you're stuck slinging hash in this dump. Nobody else would hire someone who looks like Freddy Krueger's sister." One of his crew laughed weakly, though the other's smirk faded, his gaze darting nervously around the room. Sarah's struggle played out in subtle cues, the tightening around her eyes, her breath shifting from natural to deliberately controlled, the faint tremor in her left hand she masked by clutching the order pad. For a heartbeat, the diner dissolved. She was back in the desert, tasting sand and blood, gear heavy on her shoulders, the night ripped open by the cries of the wounded. She forced the memories back in the locked box she'd built long ago, marked "Do Not Open," and steadied herself. Serving breakfast at Mel's Diner took a different kind of bravery, smiling through whispers, enduring stares, pretending not to hear the judgments of people who saw only scars. Chad yanked out his wallet with mock drama, plucked 2 crumpled bills, and tossed them at her feet. "Here's your tip, sweetheart. Maybe put towards scar cream. Not that they make anything strong enough for that train wreck you're hiding." The bills fluttered to the linoleum like brittle autumn leaves. The diner froze. The old man at table 3 half rose in fury, but his wife's urgent herald, "Don't," forced him back down. The cook stepped from the kitchen, his bulk blocking the doorway, but even he wavered, knowing how badly it could end for staff who confronted customers. Sarah bent slowly, carefully, retrieving the money with deliberate composure. But as she straightened, Chad pushed his luck too far. Whether out of spite or impulse, his hand shot out, shoving her shoulder hard enough to make her stumble. Her shirt pulled loose, her sleeve sliding above her elbow. And in that instant, her secret unraveled. Not just scars, though they told their own brutal story of fire and sacrifice, but something far more undeniable. A tattoo, crisp and unmistakable. 3rd Infantry Division, Ramadi 2006, wrapped around crossed rifles and the division's emblem. The scars bore witness to fire and battle. The tattoo shouted authenticity. A college kid near the counter gasped, "Holy ___." That's a military unit mark. His words cut through the air like a flare, shifting the atmosphere. Some patrons began to understand, are replacing pity. Chad, oblivious, laughed louder. "Oh, this is good. She's cosplaying soldier now. Bet you bought that tattoo online, huh? Stolen valor. Pathetic. As if anyone would believe you actually served." His laugh cracked through the diner like shattered glass. Sarah stood pale, exposed under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her face betrayed not anger or humiliation, but the raw devastation of someone whose most private pain had been ripped open. Her hand twitched toward her sleeve, then stopped, too late to hide. Silence consumed the diner. Even the coffee machine seemed to fall quiet. Michael was already moving, half the distance closed before he knew he'd left his seat, his chair toppling behind him. His eyes locked on the tattoo, with a ferocity bordering on revelation. Every detail confirmed what his heart had whispered for hours. The way she moved, the control she carried, the unit insignia he himself had once worn. His trembling hand brushed the photograph in his jacket pocket, the one he'd guarded for 18 years. Past and present collided, the diner dissolving into fire, cordite, and the stench of burning fuel. And with each step, the question sharpened. What bond tied this waitress to the soldier in his memories? It felt as though the ground beneath his boots might collapse at any second. His gaze stayed fixed on the tattoo, an emblem he himself once bore, before metal fragments and surgical scars erased it from his flesh, along with so much more. The coffee mug slipped from his grip, clattering against the table as he passed, its sharp echo slicing through the unnatural stillness that blanketed Mel's diner. 3rd Infantry, he murmured, his voice fragile but still carrying through the silence. 3rd Infantry. The words cracked as they left him, 18 years of searching and uncertainty crystallizing into one instant of recognition. No, impossible. After all this time, it can't be. He halted just 3 feet from Sarah, near enough to see her eyes widen with that fragile mix of fear and remembrance, yet far enough to leave her a path to flee if she chose. His stare was precise, clinical, honed by years of split-second judgment between ally and enemy. His eyes traced from the ink to her features, trying to reconcile the woman before him with the ghost from his memory. Could it really be you? The unspoken question hovered in the air, spanning nearly 2 decades of silence. Ramadi, summer of 2006. His tone was deliberate, careful, like uttering a password only 2 souls could possibly know. Sarah's response was instantaneous. Her shoulders stiffened, her eyes flicking toward the exits like prey calculating escape. Yet there was more, an involuntary flicker of recognition, slipping through cracks in her hardened mask. "Oh my God," Michael exhaled, but this time the words carried certainty, the unmistakable click of puzzle pieces sliding into place. Sergeant Miller. Sarah Miller. The name spilled from him like a long-awaited prayer, whispered for years into darkness. His hand drifted to his chest, fingers brushing the scars hidden beneath his shirt, marks born from the same inferno as hers. "You're the one. You pulled me out of that Humvee." It wasn't a question. It was a truth, spoken with such weight that it seemed to bend the air around them. "I've been sitting here for 2 hours thinking I was seeing ghosts. I've carried your photo for 18 years, searched every VA, every reunion, every forum. And here you are, pouring coffee in some nowhere diner." Sarah's composure shattered. The tray slipped from her hands, crashing to the floor like an artillery blast. Shards of cups and silverware scattered, coffee bleeding across the linoleum as she stumbled back, catching herself against the counter. "No," she whispered, shaking her head violently. "You weren't supposed to." Her voice broke. "They told me you didn't make it. They said you died in Germany." Years of grief and guilt poured through the cracks in her voice. "I thought I failed you. All these years, I thought I couldn't save you." Tears streaked down her cheeks, every drop a relic of nights haunted by the same unshakable memory. The diner seemed to quake under the revelation. Chad's laughter sputtered out, his smirk vanishing as even he realized something momentous was unfolding, something that dwarfed his cheap cruelties. His friends shifted uneasily, bravado bleeding out in the presence of raw truth. The elderly couple at table 3 clasped hands, the woman whispering about their own son who had served. A college kid lowered his phone, forgetting to record. Even the cook stepped from the kitchen, broad frame filling the doorway, eyes locked on the scene as though bearing witness to history. "I'm alive," Michael said, his voice steadier now, heavy with gratitude that words could never capture. "Because of you, when everyone else was running from the fire, you ran straight into it." He stepped closer, careful, non-threatening, aware of the fragility of the woman in front of him, scarred inside and out. "They told me a female soldier saved me, but in the chaos I lost track. Germany. Then Walter Reed. Months of surgeries. By the time I asked questions, you were gone. Discharged. Vanished." From his pocket, he drew a photo, holding it like scripture. "This was all I had. This picture, and the memory of someone who refused to leave me." Sarah's eyes locked on the photograph, her breath catching as she traced the familiar faces frozen in time. Young soldiers grinning, still untouched by the price they'd one day pay. Her trembling finger hovered over one face in particular, unmistakably connected to the man before her. "Rodriguez didn't make it," she whispered. "Neither did Thompson. I tried. God, I tried to get everyone out, but the second her voice fractured, unable to finish the line that had stalked her dreams for nearly 20 years. Survivor's guilt radiated from every part of her posture. The diner's air thickened, saturated with shared memory and unspoken sacrifice. Strangers who came for pancakes and coffee found themselves part of something sacred. A reunion that spoke to debts beyond repayment, to bonds sealed in fire, to the cost of freedom written in scars. Morning sunlight poured through the windows, painting Michael and Sarah in a glow that turned the diner into something more than a roadside stop. It became a chapel of memory, of sacrifice revealed, of wounds both visible and invisible. How does a small-town waitress end up saving a soldier's life in Iraq? The answer was unfolding before every witness. But before that truth could settle, another reckoning was already brewing. Chad Morrison's smug mask had curdled into confusion, then desperation, as he felt control slipping from his grip. Like a predator suddenly realizing it had trespassed into a territory far more dangerous than it imagined, he lashed out instead of retreating. "Oh, come on," he sneered, flailing his arms at the scene like he could scatter its weight with gestures alone. "Don't fall for this crap. She probably just peeled potatoes in a chow hall, if she was even in the service at all. Look at her." His finger shook as he jabbed towards Sarah. "She's no hero. Just some scarred-up waitress trying to score pity with a sob story about Iraq and burning trucks." His words came faster now, desperate, tumbling out in a frantic bid to reclaim the audience that was slipping away. "I've seen this scam. People buy old fatigues at Goodwill and fake being veterans to get free meals. It's pathetic. Stolen valor. That's what it is, spitting on the graves of the real ones who served. You think she got those scars in combat? More likely a kitchen fire or some trashy domestic fight gone bad." He turned to his crew for backup, but they were already edging away, faces betraying the realization that their leader had crossed lines that couldn't be walked back. Even they could feel the shift in the air, that the room was no longer his playground. Chad's rant had the opposite effect of what he intended. Instead of regaining control, he'd thrown fuel onto a fire already roaring. Where before the patron's silence was uncomfortable, Now it was bristling with fury. Fury at watching sacred truth attacked. The old man at table 3 shoved himself to his feet, his wife no longer holding him back. His weathered face twisted with disgust, the kind of expression that only someone who had seen true valor could wear when staring at its opposite. "You ignorant little shit." His voice shook, not from age, but from fury. "I fought in Vietnam. I know what a real soldier looks like. Sit your ass down and shut your mouth before you dig yourself any deeper." But Chad wasn't listening. He couldn't. He was too far gone into his own illusion of superiority, blind to the fact that the ground beneath him was crumbling like a sandcastle under a tidal wave. It was Michael Kelly's reaction, however, that carried the true weight. His face flickered through disbelief, outrage, and finally settled into something colder, sharper, the look of a soldier who had mastered the art of channeling rage into precise strikes. A man trained to use words like ammunition when fists and bullets weren't an option. He turned from Sarah slowly, deliberately, every movement calculated, commanding the room as though he had stepped back onto a battlefield. In an instant, the desperate man who'd been searching for a ghost became something else entirely, an avenger. "Peel potatoes?" The words detonated through the diner like a sergeant's barked order, making several customers flinch and rattling coffee cups on their tables. His voice was a weapon, honed and deadly. "You stand there with your whole body intact, living in comfort, and dare to question her service? You mock scars that are written in blood and fire? You want to know who she is? You want to know the truth about the woman you've spent this morning humiliating because you can't comprehend the story her scars tell?" He let the questions hang, heavy and merciless, before sweeping the crowd with his gaze, locking in their undivided attention, preparing to level Chad Morrison with a truth no man could stand against. July 15th, 2006. Ramadi, Iraq. 120 degrees in the shade, except there wasn't any shade. Just burning sun, endless sand, and death waiting on every corner. His tone dropped lower, pulling everyone in closer. A storyteller's trick, tightening the coil of tension. We were coming back from patrol. Routine. The kind of mission we'd done 100 times before. 3 Humvees, 12 soldiers. All of us just thinking about getting back to base and choking down dinner. His eyes drifted far away, seeing not the diner, but a dirt road across the world. And then the world blew apart. The pause stretched, weighted with memory. The IED hit the lead truck, my truck. The blast threw a 9,000-pound armored Humvee like a toy. Rodriguez was driving. 22 years old. El Paso kid. Had a girl waiting at home. He planned to propose when we got back. Michael's voice caught on the name. The explosion killed him instantly. At least, that's what we told ourselves. The other option, that he burned alive, was too brutal to accept. Thompson was knocked out, bleeding bad, but alive. He could have made it if we moved fast. And me, Michael's hand went unconsciously to his chest, tracing the scars beneath his shirt. I was trapped. The blast had twisted the frame. The door was sealed. Fuel tank ruptured. Fire was spreading inside. Flames eating everything. Have you ever seen a vehicle burn from the inside, Chad? His gaze cut into Morrison, voice sharpening into a blade. Have you ever felt your own skin start to blister while you're awake? Smelled your flesh cooking while you were still breathing? Known with perfect certainty that you were about to die, and die badly, with nothing left but screams and prayers for mercy. Each question was a strike, hammering away at Chad's smug ignorance. And then she appeared, Sergeant Sarah Miller, our medic. She was supposed to stay back with the other wounded, but she never stayed behind when her people were in danger. Michael's cadence shifted, ritualistic, reverent, like a hymn rising in a battlefield chapel. She charged into the fire. No hesitation, no thought for her own life. Just the unshakable fact that one of her soldiers was trapped. With nothing but her bare hands and a knife, she smashed through that window. Dragged me out, 200 pounds of dead weight in full gear, while the flames blistered her arms, burning her uniform to her skin. He stabbed the air with his words, his eyes drilling into Chad. And she didn't stop. She went back in for Thompson. Even when anyone could see the fire had spread too far. Even when ammunition inside the truck started cooking off like fireworks, rounds flying in every direction. She went back anyway. His voice dropped to a whisper that demanded silence. That's when the second IED hit. They'd set it for rescuers, designed to kill medics. Sarah saw it, and instead of running, instead of diving for cover like any sane human would, she threw herself over me. She made her body a shield. The words shook, and Michael swallowed hard against the weight of them, 18 years later, still raw. That blast should have ended both of us. Would have, if she hadn't absorbed it, if she hadn't taken the shrapnel, the fire, the debris in her own body. The diner was silent, alive with grief and reverence. Someone was crying softly. Maybe the old woman. Maybe Sarah. Maybe more than one. But Michael pressed on, his fury and gratitude too long bottled to stop now. 17. The number landed like a hammer. That's how many are alive today, because of Sarah Miller. 17 soldiers breathing, holding families, living lives because she refused to save herself. Because she ran toward death when doctrine said she should preserve herself for later. 17 families spared folded flags and cold graves because she wouldn't leave us behind. His voice surged, building to a crescendo. Bronze Star for Valor. Purple Heart. Combat Medical Badge. Meritorious Service Medal. She earned them all. And what did she ask for? Nothing. She didn't parade around demanding recognition. She faded into civilian life, carrying scars inside and out, pouring coffee for people who sneered at her, mocked her, treated her like a freak. And you, Chad Morrison of Branson Construction, you dare to call her Freddy Krueger. You dare to throw change on the floor for the woman who saved lives you're not worthy to speak of. Phones lit up all around the diner, raised like banners in a digital battle. Streams already running. Words and images flying across the internet in real time. This is viral, someone shouted, half in awe, half in glee. 89,000 watching live, spreading like wildfire. Another voice cut closer to Chad. That's Branson Construction on his shirt. I tagged their CEO, tagged the company account. Everyone's seeing this. Chad's phone buzzed like a hornet's nest. Notifications piling up in an unstoppable flood. His boss's name flashed. Then his supervisor. Then unknown numbers, reporters, angry strangers. His face drained of color as the reality slammed into him. Oh God, my boss, he whispered, voice drowned out by the relentless noise of his phone. But the crowd wasn't budging. They formed a wall between him and the exit. He wasn't leaving. Not yet. Not before facing what he'd unleashed. The truth became clear with every ping and every furious comment flooding the live stream. His employers, his colleagues, the media, veterans groups, everyone now knew exactly who Chad Morrison was. The universe had opened its ledger, and it was about to settle the account. At that moment, the kitchen doors banged open. Bob Hutchinson, Mel's Diner's manager, strode out with the presence of a man who knew command. A Marine once, his faded tattoo still visible on his arm. Bob's expression burned with fury and shame. He took in the wreckage in one glance. Sarah standing exposed, tears streaking her scarred face. Michael trembling with righteous rage. Chad pale and cornered, trying in vain to silence the shrill chorus of his phone. The crowd unmoving, judgment in their eyes. What the hell is happening in my diner? Bob's voice carried authority, the kind that had once silenced men under fire. It wasn't a question, it was an order. A customer thrust a phone at him, replaying the confrontation already watched by hundreds of thousands. Bob's jaw clenched tighter with every second of footage. Bob's jaw tightened as he watched his employee being degraded and struck. His voice dropped to a razor-sharp whisper. Chad Morrison, get out of my diner. If you step within 100 yards of this place again, I'll have you hauled off for trespassing and assault. Move. But Chad's way out was cut off by customers who had locked themselves into a wall of flesh and fury. Their eyes blazed with a shared anger. My phone, Chad stuttered, staring at the screen as his boss's name flashed insistently. I have to answer. The crowd wasn't moved. Answer here, someone snapped. On speaker. Let's all hear what Branson Construction has to say. His hands trembled as he tapped the button. A voice erupted, harsh and furious, filling the diner. Morrison, what the hell have you done? We're drowning in thousands of messages. Every channel's blown up. The website's crashed. News vans are on the way. The owner called me personally. You're finished. Effective immediately. Security will pack your stuff. Don't step foot on company property again. Don't use us as a reference. And Morrison, pray this doesn't end up in court. The line went dead, leaving Chad frozen. Phone pressed to his ear, his face drained to ash as the weight of ruin crushed down on him. For the first time since the chaos began, Sarah found her voice. I never wanted this, she said quietly, each word deliberate. I just wanted to pour coffee, to live in peace, to not have my past dragged into every moment. Her gaze shifted to Michael, softening. I thought about you every day, in every nightmare, every time I saw my scars. I thought about how I couldn't save Rodriguez, how Thompson still died. I thought I failed them. Her voice cracked on their names. I'm sorry I wasn't faster, stronger, better. Michael crossed the room in 2 strides and wrapped her in an embrace heavy with sorrow, gratitude, and the weight of years. You saved who you could, he said thickly. That's everything. I've searched 18 years to tell you thank you. That my daughters exist because of you. The two clung to each other as the diner erupted into applause, starting in scattered bursts and swelling into thunder. Even Chad's abandoned co-workers joined in, finally grasping the magnitude of what they had witnessed. When the sound finally ebbed, Bob Hutchinson stepped forward again. His voice carried steady authority. Sarah, I owe you an apology. 3 years you've worked here, and I never asked. That's on me. He hesitated, collecting himself. Effective immediately, you're promoted to shift manager, 30% raise. And you don't hide those scars again. Anyone who's got a problem with them has a problem with me. He turned to the crowd. This place honors service. Always has. Always will. The customers parted, letting Chad stumble toward the door, his phone buzzing with endless calls. At the threshold, he half turned, maybe searching for words of defense, but the glare of every patron silenced him. He slipped out into the sunlight, the bell's chime marking his exit. 6 months later, Mel's diner bore subtle but powerful changes. Sarah stood behind the counter in her manager's uniform, sleeves rolled up, scars no longer hidden. Behind her, a framed photo showed Sergeant Sarah Miller in combat gear with a plaque. Our hero. Other portraits of local veterans now joined hers. The morning rush buzzed when the bell rang. Chad Morrison entered quietly. The swagger was gone. He moved carefully, watched warily by regulars. I know I'm not welcome, he began softly, but I had to bring this myself. He laid an envelope on the counter. I lost everything after that day. My job, my wife, my home. Ended up back with my parents. Worst part was seeing the man I'd become. I've been volunteering at the Veterans Center for 4 months now. That's $5,000 from our fundraiser. It's not enough, but maybe it's a start. Sarah studied him. His gym-built frame had melted into the leaner strength of hard labor. Designer clothes were gone, replaced by a plain work shirt dotted with volunteer badges. His manicured hands now carried calluses from painting and repairing wheelchairs, marks of service, not vanity. Some regulars stiffened, ready to protect Sarah. Old Harold even half rose, but something in Chad's posture, his bowed head, his slumped shoulders, made them pause. Sarah looked at him closely. Not the arrogant bully, but a man cracked open and trying to rebuild. She knew that kind of brokenness. She'd lived with it for 18 years. The envelope shook in his grip. Across the back were handwritten notes, signatures from veterans who had clearly judged that redemption was possible, if earned. They made me prove myself, Chad said roughly. 6 months. No excuses. No complaints. Show up every day. They said if I did that, maybe I was serious. Sarah held his gaze, then slid the envelope into the drawer without opening it. Everyone deserves a second chance, she said gently. Service taught me that. Sometimes you save people who wouldn't save you. Sometimes that's humanity. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something. Chad nodded, accepting more grace than he deserved. As he turned for the door, Sarah called after him. Chad. He stopped. The veteran sinner always needs hands. Keep showing up. A faint smile touched her lips. That's all any of us can do. He nodded again and stepped out, the bell chiming behind him. The future waiting outside wasn't promised, but for the first time, it might hold redemption if he kept walking the hard road.